Now we will be learning about Angular components. So what is the component? Component is an individual unit in a web page. So let's say if I have a application, I can say this particular search box is a component and the entire blue color navigation is a component. And here if you scroll down, you might see the footer itself is a component. So component is a individual unit in an application. You can make it a smaller component. Let's say you can create a search component, and search component you can embed or you can insert inside a header component, or you can create one whole big component called header component. In the header component itself, you are going to create the search and everything. So if you see here, we have a search component, we have the header component, we have the submenu component, main body, and the footer component. Every Angular application has at least one component, and that is called root component. Okay, we will see that right now. So if you go back to the code, so this is my app component. If you see, app component has a lot of stuff. Let's execute this. Okay, to execute, type ng-serve space -o. Okay, so it will execute the project and open in the Chrome browser. I have my local running, and let's open that, and you can see here. If you see in the project, I have only one component, that is app component. These are just folders. Let me delete them. Okay, now you can see there is an app component. So app component, let's say if I'm going to see, this is not written by me. So whenever you set up an Angular project, we'll get this entire HTML, CSS and everything. Okay, so for now, just understand from the page that this is not multiple component, this is only one component. This entire thing is one component. Okay, so what we can do, we can create one component like this, or we can create another component like logo and header component, and we can embed in the app component. Okay, so for example, if I'm going to take this out, I'll just say this is app component. Okay, so if you see, now we are only saying this is app component. If I want to create another component, there are multiple ways. So first, let's understand what a component contains. Okay, so a component generally contains four different objects. Okay, four different files. So one is TypeScript file, and the other one is HTML. We also call it as template, and the CSS for the styles, and the spec.ts, which is for writing the test cases. This is not mandatory to run the project, but we can write, even CSS is not mandatory. You can write even CSS inside the HTML file, and even HTML you can still write in the TypeScript. So TypeScript file is mandatory. Okay, so now first let's write all we can let's understand these four things, right? So we have the app component.html, we have app component.ts, everything. If you go and see this app component.ts, so what it is saying, so I'm going to declare, we need to use at the rate component annotation. We need to use at the rate component annotation. So at the rate component annotation is saying that I'm going to use a HTML file, and this is my template URL. So from this HTML file, we are going to get the view, and same thing, we are going to get styles from here. If I want to create a similar component, let's manually create a component here. I'll create header component. Okay, so I'm going to first create a folder called header. So inside a header, I'm going to create a file called header.component.ts. Then I'm going to create another file, header. dot component dot html. So if you see in the app dot component dot css, if I'm going to write some style, say text color blue, this h1 style is written in component.css and this css file is declared inside the component.ts. So if you go and see, there is a style applied. Now we have created our own component called header component. Let's first create a simple header. I'm going to say now. Okay. I'm going to show you how I have created this now in a few minutes. Okay. So for this now, I want to apply some background color. So I don't have much CSS file, right? So you can still write the style element tag here. And then I'll say for a now, I want some background color blue or some orange, something like. But this is not a good practice to write the css styles inside the html. So for that, what we're going to do, we are going to definitely create a file which says header.component.css, header.component.css. Now here I can say now, for a now component, I want to apply background color aqua. Okay. And any anchor colors, maybe here I'll say for any anchor, text color should be red. All right, so we have written some css, we have written some html. Now comes the part component file. So first we are going to use at the rate component as the annotation. Now, if you see, at the rate component is coming from Angular code. So Angular code, it should be available from the library node modules. Okay. So now if you see, okay, export class header component. You can write any name, but I'm going to follow the same naming convention. So now we are getting an error here. Why we are getting error? Because we need selector. What is a selector? We will see. There are different ways of creating the selector. The first one is class. Okay, we'll say dot app header. Then we are going to create template URL. So what is a template URL? It's nothing but our HTML file, which is header dot component dot HTML. Okay. So you see now there is no error because CSS is not mandatory, but I'm going to say style URL, or yeah, style URLs. Uh, Sorry, dot slash header dot component dot CSS colon. So this is style URLs, and mention this in a array because we can apply multiple files, multiple CSS. Okay. Okay. Now I'm just going to declare some title here. This is main header. This is not required. Okay. All right. Now, once we create the component, now let's create a, okay. Now we are exporting this component, but now let's see if my output is still not coming. So here comes the main thing, which is the app module.ts, right? So what we discussed in the previous session, this app component or app module should know about a component whatever we created, right? So if I'm creating header component, my app module doesn't know that. Okay, so I need to declare that app header component inside the ng module. In Angular module, you are going to declare that. So this is my component. So if you see header component, it automatically imports the statement import header component from header folder, header component. Okay, so component.ts it's not required. So whenever you give the component name header component, it directly imports from the TypeScript. So now my declaration is ready, right? Now let's see, it's still not coming. Why? Because now app knows, the module knows that I have a component, but in the HTML you are not using it, right? So until you inject them, you write inside another component, it will not deliver. So we go to the app.component. On top of this component, I'm going to say slash app hyphen header. And what is this element? Still our app doesn't know what is this app hyphen header, right? Because if you go to the TypeScript file of the header component, here we have created something called as app hyphen header. Okay, so I'll take out this app hyphen header. So this is my selector. So the selector is used to insert in a HTML file. Okay, so this is my app header. If I'm going to just say header, I can create the component name as the element name as header. Okay, like this. Now let's see if the component is injected or not. Yes, it's injected. Okay, so it's coming active link, disabled link, something like this. But we haven't applied all the styles. I just applied the background color and the text color. So if I want to create a footer element or a footer component, now we know uh, to create a component, we manually need to create a file. We manually need to create the TypeScript and inject the HTML and CSS file. And then also in the app module, we need to declare that component. So manual process might take a lot of time. In a real world, when you're working in a project, you might need to create number of components. So for that, we can utilize Angular CLI commands. Okay, so go here, open a new bash. Okay, and here type uh, ng generate component. You can give the folder name like footer, or you can directly give the component name. Okay, ng generate component footer. Now press enter. Now let's see the magic, what is going to happen. Now let me close all open files. If you notice, there is a header, there is a footer, and we have the footer component with the HTML, we have the CSS, we have the spec file, we have the TypeScript file. And you can see it is already grieving the selector, and it is also inserting the template URL and the style URLs. So in a real time, when you are working on a project, no need to create the files manually. We can simply use this command. If I want to create another component, I have another shortcut. You can simply type ng generate c. G stands for generate, C stands for component, and then give side nav. Now you will see side nav is created. Okay, side nav is another component which is created. And you also notice in the app.module.ts, the import statements are also available. The import statements are also available and the components are also declared. Now, only thing is we need to use those components. Okay, in the app.component.html, I'll just say what is my selector for the head footer? It's a app hyphen footer. So this is a naming convention we can follow. Okay, and we'll say my side nav component, right? App hyphen side nav. Okay, now let's execute this. Okay, you can see side nav is working, footer is working. We need to understand that in the app component, whatever the way we are declaring those components, it is executing. If I want my header component again, or if I want side nav again, I can just declare that statement here. So it's a reusable component, right? Let's say I want a footer component, sorry, logo component. Let's take out this because a logo is used in header as well as footer. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, we have seen the second method to create. We can also use Angular extension. Okay, Angular language service. Okay, when you install Angular language service, you will see on the right side, on the left side, if I want to create a component, right click and you can say generate a component. I want the component name as logo, default component, confirm. Okay. Okay. You can see a logo component is created. If I'm using this Angular language service, okay, I already installed in my computer. So what happens when you install that extension? You can simply right click, and if you don't remember the command, you can click on generate component. It does the same process. If you see logo, it has so 4 files, and it also has the in the app module, it also has the import statement. Now what I'm going to do, this logo statement, this logo component I need in header as well as footer. So what I'm going to do, go to header. In the header component, I'm going to say app hyphen logo, app hyphen logo. Copy this in the footer component. So go to the footer component. Inside the footer component, I'll say app logo. Now let's see, maybe I'll apply some style here. Div class equals to footer. So for this footer class, I'll just add some height, bottom 0. Okay, some background color, aqua. Okay, now let's go back and see. Position. Okay, height is there, width 100%. Okay, I just given some random thing. Okay, now you can see the logo is available here. It is inside the header component. If you right click and inspect, you will notice that app logo is available inside the header component. You see header component is here. So whenever we are going to use some reusable components like the button component or a checkbox component, we'll create a separate component and use them.